Hello there, and welcome to Forgotten Worlds. My name is Thomas, and I'm glad you found your way here, a place where curiosity drifts slowly, and science unfolds like a tide under moonlight. Tonight, we're not looking up at the stars in search of aliens. Instead, we're looking down into the dark waters that cover most of our world. Because what if the oceans, vast, cold, and still largely unexplored, were already home to alien life forms? We know that life thrives in places once thought impossible: boiling vents on the ocean floor, crushing depths where sunlight never reaches, icy lakes sealed beneath glaciers. Creatures from these places already seem otherworldly, glowing, shapeless, strange. If such wonders exist here, then perhaps something truly alien is waiting for us in the abyss, unseen, just beneath the waves. Before we dive deeper, I'd like to invite you to join our little community of night wanderers. If you enjoy drifting into these quiet explorations, please leave a like and subscribe. It helps more travelers find their way to this channel. And tell me in the comments, where in the world are you listening from tonight, and what time is it for you right now? I love knowing how far these stories travel, reaching night owls and dreamers across the globe. So settle in, let the day fall away, and imagine this: the oceans not as empty water, but as the first and most hidden alien world. To begin, we need to see the seas as they really are, not familiar, but utterly strange. A realm as mysterious to us as the surface of distant planets. Beneath the surface of the sea lies a world that might as well be another planet. The sunlight you know, warm, golden, full of color, barely reaches beyond the first 100 meters. After that, the ocean falls into a twilight zone, dim and blue, until even that fades. The deeper you go, the darker it becomes, until light itself disappears. You could descend for miles and never see the bottom, surrounded by a blackness so complete it feels infinite. In this alien world, pressure mounts with every meter. At depths beyond the reach of ordinary divers, the weight of the water would crush a human body in moments. Steel bends. Submarines creak like old ships in a storm. And yet, against all odds, life flourishes here. Creatures have found ways to not only survive, but to thrive, in a realm that should be utterly inhospitable. Some of them look as if they swam out of dreams or nightmares. The anglerfish, with its enormous jaw and needle-like teeth, carries a glowing lure that dangles from its forehead like a lantern in the void. In the endless night, the strange beacon draws prey close enough to be swallowed whole. Then there is the giant squid, a creature so rarely seen alive that for centuries it lived only in rumor and myth. With eyes the size of dinner plates, the largest in the animal kingdom, it can glimpse the faintest traces of light, perhaps even the ghostly shadows of predators hunting in the abyss. Closer to the sea floor, at the edges of hydrothermal vents, the ocean reveals a sight that defies imagination. Chimneys of black smoke rise from the Earth's crust, spewing superheated water rich with minerals. Around them, colonies of life gather in thriving abundance: ghostly white crabs, scarlet shrimp, and vast gardens of tube worms stretching taller than a person. These organisms feed not on sunlight, but on chemical energy, a process known as chemosynthesis. It is life born from fire and stone, sustained by the Earth's hidden furnace. When scientists first discovered these vent ecosystems in the late 1970s, it rewrote what we thought possible. Until then, biology had taught us that sunlight was the foundation of all food chains. Yet here was a living world, vibrant and complete, with no need for the sun at all. In this alien ocean on Earth, the rules were different and far more flexible than we had dared to imagine. And the truth is, we have barely touched the surface of what is there. Despite centuries of exploration, over 80% of the world's oceans remain unmapped, unobserved, and unexplored. Vast mountain ranges taller than the Rockies lie hidden under the waves. Deep trenches carve into the crust, darker and more remote than any desert. Whole ecosystems may exist in these unseen places, invisible to us, evolving in isolation for millions of years. To us they would appear alien, perhaps not in the sense of green skin or flying saucers, but in their very structure, their chemistry, their way of living. We might see bodies without bones, intelligence without eyes, or colonies that function as a single organism, a collective mind drifting silently through the abyss. If we found such beings on Europa or Enceladus, we would call them extraterrestrial without hesitation. Yet they may already be here, beneath the surface of our own oceans. And that realization brings us to an even deeper question. If Earth's seas already hold such strangeness, what else might be waiting in the most extreme corners, in places we have never dared or never managed to reach? If we want a hint, we don't need to leave our planet at all. We only have to look at the smallest, most stubborn forms of life, extremophiles. These are the organisms that choose to live where no one else can, as if the edges of survival were made just for them. In the boiling waters of hydrothermal vents, where temperatures can rise above 400 degrees Celsius, microbes flourish in darkness, feeding on sulfur and iron. To us, these are places of death, black smoke, toxic chemicals, and crushing weight. And yet, there in the shadows, entire colonies form, not only surviving but thriving. In Antarctica, beneath miles of ice, there are hidden lakes sealed away for millions of years. No sunlight has ever touched them. No air has ever stirred their surface. And still, when scientists drill through, they find bacteria, stirring slowly, alive and patient in their icy tomb. Some have evolved to feed on the minerals locked in stone. Others create energy in ways that seem like alchemy, conjuring life from chemical traces too faint for us to measure. And far from the cold, in the silent depths of methane seeps on the sea floor, there are microbes that eat gas as if it were food. They knit themselves into communities with clams and worms, exchanging nutrients in delicate partnerships. It is a way of life so different from our own that it almost feels like we're glimpsing a parallel biology, something that belongs not just to Earth, but to any world that has the right chemistry. Scientists study these extremophiles not only because they fascinate us, but because they serve as guides. If life can survive here, in boiling rock, in frozen ice, in toxic gas, then perhaps life can survive anywhere. It's no coincidence that when missions plan for Europa or Enceladus, moons with oceans hidden under ice, they look first to Earth's extremophiles for comparison. On Europa, the icy crust is scarred with cracks that may connect to a global sea below. On Enceladus, geysers of water shoot into space from fractures in the surface, carrying hints of salt and organic molecules. These are not just signs of water. They are signs that life, if it exists there, would have to be just as tough, just as strange, just as stubborn as the extremophiles of Earth. And maybe that is the real lesson. Life doesn't need gentle conditions. It doesn't need sunlight or warmth or even air as we know it. It only needs possibility, a crack to grow into, a chemistry to harness, a place to hold on. So if the tiniest organisms can colonize boiling vents, frozen lakes, and methane fields, why not imagine something far stranger, living deeper still? Creatures not yet seen, hidden in the trenches where light has never entered. Entire kingdoms of life, quietly carrying on in silence, unnoticed not because they are rare, but because we have not yet learned how to look for them. And if that is true, then Earth's oceans are not only home to our familiar biology, they may already host the first blueprint for alien life, not somewhere distant among the stars, but here, woven into the dark waters that surround us. For as long as humans have gazed across the sea, the imagination has filled its depths with beings half seen, half dreamed. Picture an ancient sailor on the deck of a wooden ship, the night sky stretched above like black velvet, the ocean around him whispering and shifting with unseen life. Out of the darkness a shape rises, a glimmer of pale skin, the sweep of a fin, the sound of something breathing just beyond the lantern light. By morning it becomes a story, and by retelling it grows into legend. Mermaids drift through the folklore of countless cultures, their voices described as sweet and dangerous, their bodies half human, half fish. In some tales they sing, in others they scream, but always they embody the strangeness of the sea, beautiful, unpredictable, and capable of pulling men beneath the waves. Imagine the sight of a manatee surfacing briefly, its round body catching moonlight in the spray. To a weary sailor with salt-stung eyes, it could have seemed like something far more mysterious, something otherworldly. Leviathans haunt the scriptures of the Middle East, massive creatures with scales like iron, their backs rising from the water like islands. Norse sailors feared the kraken, a monstrous squid said to drag entire ships into the abyss with its coiling arms. Polynesian myths tell of Tangaroa, god of the sea, whose moods shaped tides and storms. In every culture touched by the ocean, the water was never empty. It was inhabited alive, a place where humans were never alone. Perhaps these myths were not mere fantasies, but echoes of rare encounters. A sudden glimpse of a giant squid's tentacle breaking the surface, a whale breaching unexpectedly, or the haunting glow of bioluminescent waves rolling under a black sky. To those who first saw them, without maps or microscopes, such visions must have felt like intrusions from another world. And in a way they were. These were creatures adapted to a realm so alien to human senses that their appearance seemed supernatural. Even today, when we send submersibles down into the deep, we return with footage that feels mythic. Jellyfish that shimmer like lanterns, their bells pulsing in silence. Transparent predators, their organs glowing faintly as they drift. Fish with teeth too large for their mouths, their faces frozen in permanent snarls. To the modern mind, such images are scientific data. To the sailors of centuries past, they would have been proof of gods, monsters, or spirits, and that raises a quiet possibility. Myths may not be inventions, but distorted memories, human attempts to make sense of fleeting encounters with beings that seem too strange to belong to Earth. What one generation called a god, another called a monster, and today we call it an organism. Yet beneath those shifting names is the same truth. The ocean has always held shapes beyond our understanding. Even in the modern age, when satellites map our skies and sonar traces the contours of the sea, mysteries slip through the cracks. Some arrive not as myths whispered around fires, but as radar blips, cockpit recordings, and classified files stamped with the seal of governments. They are not always seen soaring among the stars. Sometimes they are seen vanishing beneath the waves. Imagine standing on the deck of a ship at night, the air sharp with salt, the horizon lost in darkness. Suddenly a streak of light cuts across the sky, too fast for any plane you know. It halts for an instant, then plunges toward the sea. You brace for impact, for spray, for thunder, for an explosion of foam, but instead the object slips into the water without a sound, leaving the surface unbroken, as though the ocean welcomed it silently into its depths. This is the essence of a USO, an unidentified submersible object. The US Navy has declassified reports of such encounters. Radar operators have tracked objects moving at impossible speeds, dropping from altitudes of thousands of feet into the ocean in seconds, defying known physics. Pilots have described metallic shapes darting across their path, then submerging into the sea as if the boundary between air and water did not exist. One famous account spoke of an object the size of a jet traveling underwater at speeds rivaling the fastest torpedoes, yet producing no wake, no turbulence, no sound detectable to sonar. For decades, such stories were confined to rumor, passed among sailors, and whispered in military corridors. But slowly they have seeped into public awareness, adding a new dimension to the conversation about extraterrestrial life. Because if visitors are here, if something intelligent and technological moves across our world, then perhaps they do not linger in orbit or hover above cities. Perhaps they prefer the oceans, a shield of water and silence covering 70% of the planet. And why wouldn't they? From a strategic perspective, the oceans are a fortress. They are vast, layered, and concealing. Satellites can scan the surface, but the abyss below is nearly impenetrable. The Mariana Trench, for instance, plunges nearly 7 miles down, a place so deep and so pressurized that few human craft have ever visited. Entire mountain ranges, rift valleys, and volcanic plains lie hidden under those waters. If you wanted a place to hide, to observe, or even to build, there could be no better refuge. Think of it from an outsider's view. The oceans are resource-rich, filled with minerals, currents that generate energy, and ecosystems that could provide food or biological material. They are remote, far from prying human eyes, mostly unexplored and largely inaccessible. They are naturally camouflaged, sound bends in the water, light is absorbed quickly, and detection is difficult. For any intelligence seeking to remain unseen, the sea offers a veil as effective as the void of space, but far closer to our world, and yet, perhaps it is not only concealment they seek. Water itself is precious. In the cosmos, oceans are rare jewels. Many worlds are dry, scorched, or frozen solid. Here, Earth's seas hold the one thing every life form we know depends on: liquid water. Could it be that our oceans are not just hiding places, but also sanctuaries? A reservoir of life-sustaining material that makes Earth more than just a waypoint, but a haven. Of course, skeptics caution that many sightings have natural explanations. Meteors, experimental submarines, sensor glitches. And perhaps some do, but not all. The strangeness lies not only in what is seen, but in how it is seen. Objects without propulsion, movements that ignore inertia, sudden accelerations no human pilot could survive. These are details not easily dismissed, because they are recorded by instruments as well as by eyes. And so, the reports persist. Fishermen speak of glowing spheres that rise from the water before vanishing into the clouds. Sonar operators capture readings of vast shapes, larger than whales, moving silently through the deep. Divers tell of faint hums or vibrations, felt more than heard just before lights flicker in the distance. Each story alone might be easy to doubt. Together they create an echo, one that lingers in the imagination, like the low resonance of the sea itself. And this brings us to a speculative question, one as old as the myths of mermaids and leviathans, but shaped now by technology and data. If something intelligent is here, watching, then why do they favor the oceans? Perhaps it is not a choice at all, but a clue. Perhaps the oceans are not a hiding place, but their natural home. Perhaps we are not witnessing visitors adapting to water, but residents emerging briefly into our sky. It is a haunting thought, one that hums at the edge of imagination. Because if the oceans are already occupied, not just by life we know, but by intelligences we do not, then the surface of the sea may be less a boundary than a veil, and every wave, every horizon, could be covering not emptiness, but someone's home. To imagine what might live beneath that veil, we have to first imagine what it would take to survive there. The deep ocean is not just empty water. It is a crucible of extremes, a place where physics itself becomes the gatekeeper of life. The first challenge is pressure. With every 10 meters of depth, the weight of water increases. At 1,000 meters, the squeeze is already 100 times greater than the air pressing on you right now. At the bottom of the Mariana Trench, nearly 7 miles down, the pressure is over 1,000 times stronger, enough to crush submarines, enough to turn empty spaces into nothingness, and yet somehow life persists. Picture it, a fragile-looking jelly drifting in that abyss. Its body is soft, translucent, barely more than water and gel, yet it endures what steel struggles to bear. Perhaps this is the lesson of survival in the deep, to bend instead of break, to yield instead of resist. If alien physiology evolved here, it might not be armored and rigid, but supple, fluid, designed to move with the pressure rather than against it. Then there's the matter of light, or rather, its absence. Beyond a few 100 meters, the sun is gone. The water grows cold, the colors vanish, and darkness presses against every surface. To survive, creatures must invent their own light. Bioluminescence is their answer, a quiet fire inside the flesh, glowing blues and greens that flash like lanterns in the abyss. Some use it to lure prey, some to confuse predators, some to speak in a secret language of pulses and glimmers. Imagine an entire civilization built on light not from stars but from their own bodies, words written across the dark by glowing skin, conversations unfolding in silent patterns of brightness and shadow. And of course there's the cold. Near freezing it seeps into every current. Warm-blooded beings like us would shiver, slow, and stop. But in the deep, life has learned to rewrite chemistry itself. Antifreeze proteins swirl in fish blood, keeping it liquid when it should turn solid. Microbes adjust their membranes, reshaping themselves at a molecular level just to endure the chill. An alien lineage might take this further, weaving ice into their bodies as a strength rather than a weakness. Beings whose bones are crystal, whose tissues flex like frozen glass. Some scientists speculate that a life elsewhere evolved in such conditions. It might not even follow the carbon-based patterns we know. Silicon, abundant in rock and sand, could serve as a scaffold for alien biology. Imagine beings whose flesh gleams with mineral sheen, translucent as quartz, growing slowly in the dark like living stone. Or perhaps they are closer to water itself, amorphous, shape-shifting, less a body than a process, a ripple with awareness, a current with intent. And yet, even on Earth, we already see hints of this alien logic. The octopus, with its 3 hearts and its mind distributed through its arms, can change color and texture in an instant, vanishing into coral or rock. The squid, with its enormous eyes, perceives a world we cannot see. Their intelligence feels different, fluid, intuitive, almost like an echo of something older, something not quite ours. Some biologists have even called them aliens among us, not as metaphor, but as genuine scientific astonishment at how other their minds truly are. If our oceans can produce such strangeness, then what might emerge in the deepest, most inaccessible trenches? Life forms, shaped by pressures we can barely simulate, by darkness older than human memory, by cold that never relents. To us they would seem alien, and perhaps that is because, in every way that matters, they are. If such beings exist, surviving where the sun never shines, the question then becomes, how would they speak? In the deep ocean, voices cannot travel as they do on land. Air is absent, light is absent, and yet communication still thrives, in ways stranger and perhaps more beautiful than the words we know. Consider the silence of the abyss. Imagine yourself suspended there, no surface in sight, no floor beneath your feet, just endless water pressing softly against your skin. It seems utterly still, utterly quiet, but to the creatures who call it home, it is alive with sound, light, and signals that never touch the human ear. Whales, for instance, fill the water with music. The songs of humpbacks stretch for miles, low notes that ripple through the dark like cathedral bells, rolling across a vast plain. Dolphins whistle and click, their voices ricocheting off rocks and bodies, building images from echoes, a language of sound painting, where each phrase is not just heard but seen. Some researchers believe dolphins may even share something close to names, distinct whistles that identify individuals the way we call each other by words. Now imagine alien intelligences in the same seas, shaped not by lungs or vocal cords, but by the physics of their environment. Perhaps they flash patterns of bioluminescence, pulsing in waves across their bodies like sentences written in light. One might blink once, another twice, then unfurl a ripple of color that rolls from head to tail, a luminous phrase drifting through the water like a lantern carried down a midnight street. To us, it would look like decoration. To them, it could be poetry. Or perhaps they do not use light at all. Instead, they may hum in vibrations too deep for us to feel, seismic whispers that tremble through the water, felt as pressure changes rather than heard as sound. A school of such beings could weave together a chorus of pulses, each beat carrying not just words but emotion, mood, or intent. It would be a language of touch more than hearing, a language that only makes sense when you are inside the same ocean, wrapped by the same pressure. Some might even speak with chemistry. On land, ants lay down trails of scent to guide each other. In the ocean, corals and plankton already release chemical cues to attract or repel. For an alien biology, molecules could be letters, drifting in plumes through the water, a slow-motion message carried by the currents. Imagine drifting in the deep and suddenly sensing a change in the water, a taste of iron or salt, a hint of bitterness, a phrase delivered on your tongue, telling you who is near and what they mean. And here, speculation brushes against something real. Because in our oceans, scientists have recorded sounds they cannot explain. The bloop, captured in 1997, was a low, powerful rumble detected across thousands of kilometers of ocean. For years it was speculated to be the call of some vast unknown animal, so immense its voice shook half the Pacific. Others have recorded clicks, moans, and pulses that do not match whales, submarines, or geological noise. Most are eventually explained as ice quakes or shifting plates, but not all. A handful remain unsolved, suspended in the catalogue of ocean mysteries like stray letters, in a language we have not yet learned to read. What if these sounds are not accidents, but messages? Not the voice of one animal, but the attempt of an intelligence still hidden, reaching out in a medium we have only just begun to listen to? To our ears they are noise, to theirs perhaps they are stories, conversations, warnings, songs. Picture this: far below, In a trench never visited by human eyes, an alien colony glows faintly with blue-green light. One being pulses once, sending a signal of light. Another answers, not with light, but with a resonant thrum, a vibration so deep it rattles the stones. A third releases a chemical ribbon, curling like smoke into the water, carrying meaning that we could never smell. Together, these signals overlap, intertwine, forming a conversation that fills the trench with information invisible to us. To them, it is ordinary life. To us, it would be indistinguishable from the ocean itself. This is where the boundary between science and wonder blurs, because the truth is, we do not yet know how many languages the ocean speaks. We are only beginning to listen with hydrophones, to watch with submersibles, to measure with sensors. Perhaps the signals are already there, drifting in the darkness, but we do not yet recognize them. We hear static where they hear meaning. And so the idea lingers, that even now the ocean may be alive with voices we cannot hear. Voices not of whales or dolphins, but of minds older, stranger, and perhaps not entirely Earth's own. When we think of oceans, we think of Earth. Salt spray on the wind, waves breaking against shorelines, currents shifting endlessly under a blue sky. But the truth is, oceans may not be Earth's alone. Across the solar system, and far beyond it, worlds conceal their own seas. Some are buried under ice, others cloaked in haze, but each whispers the same possibility. Water is not rare. It is everywhere. And wherever water gathers, life may not be far behind. Take Europa, one of Jupiter's many moons. At first glance it is a frozen sphere, pale and cracked, its surface carved with long scars of ice. But scientists believe that beneath that shell lies a vast global ocean, more water than all of Earth's seas combined. Imagine standing on Europa's surface, the airless silence pressing on your ears, the horizon lit by the distant glow of Jupiter, vast and striped, dominating the sky. Beneath your feet, miles of ice groan and shift, and below that, a sea without end, dark and hidden, waiting. Now picture Enceladus, a small moon of Saturn. White, glittering, icy, it should be lifeless, and yet from its south pole geysers erupt into space, plumes of water vapor, salts, and organic molecules. They burst out like breath, drifting into Saturn's rings, leaving a fingerprint of what lies below. The Cassini spacecraft tasted those plumes, and what it found suggested not only liquid water, but the chemistry of hydrothermal vents, the same kind of chemistry that feeds life at the bottom of Earth's oceans. To think of this is to imagine an ocean floor under alien ice, lined with black smokers, where warmth and minerals pour into the water, and where life, stubborn and strange, could already be growing. And then there is Titan, Saturn's largest moon. Its surface is orange and hazy, its rivers and lakes filled not with water but with liquid methane and ethane. Yet beneath its frozen crust, scientists suspect another hidden ocean of salty water, a world within a world. Standing there, the air thick and golden, you might see seas that glisten not like our own, but like liquid glass, smooth and metallic under the dim light of the sun. And all the while, beneath the surface, another ocean slumbers, unseen, unmeasured, but possible. When you string these worlds together, Europa, Enceladus, Titan, a pattern begins to form. Oceans are not rare. They may be the rule rather than the exception. The universe, it seems, is less a desert and more an archipelago, dotted with hidden seas. And if oceans are common, then perhaps life is common too. After all, here on Earth, wherever water collects, life finds a way. From desert pools to icy glaciers, from swamps to trenches, Water is the stage on which biology performs its miracles. So when we look at Europa's hidden seas or Enceladus's plumes, we are not only looking at geology. We are looking at potential mirrors, oceans that might hum with life, just as ours does. The comparison is irresistible. On Earth, our seas cradle creatures that already seem alien, glowing jellies, transparent hunters, worms that live on stone and gas. If such wonders arose here, why not elsewhere? Why not in the dark waters of Europa, where the ice ceiling glitters faintly like a fall sky? Why not in the seafloor vents of Enceladus, where black smoke could feed entire ecosystems? Why not in Titan's double oceans, one of methane above, one of water below? A dual habitat so strange that it challenges even our imagination. To lie awake at night and think about this is to feel a quiet shift. Suddenly, Earth does not seem so alone. Our oceans are not singular miracles, but part of a cosmic pattern. We may not yet have seen an alien swimmer or heard its voice, but the conditions are written across the solar system, repeated like verses in a song. Oceans are out there, and perhaps, if we listen long enough, they will answer back. If oceans are scattered across the cosmos like jewels in the dark, then perhaps Earth's seas are not exceptions at all, but part of something larger. They may not only belong to this planet, but to a wider story written across the galaxy, a pattern of water and life repeating, echoing, evolving. Consider the idea of panspermia, the possibility that life does not always begin where it is found. Imagine a comet drifting through space, its icy shell fractured by starlight, its interior holding simple cells or fragments of genetic code. When that comet falls into a planet's atmosphere, the fire of entry does not always burn everything away. Sometimes seeds survive. They fall into oceans, into warm pools, into cracks in the crust, and from there a spark catches. When we look at Earth's earliest history, this is not an impossible thought. The first life appears in the fossil record so quickly after the planet cooled that it has puzzled scientists for decades. The oceans had barely formed, the crust was still unstable, and yet already cells were swimming. Some argue that life was simply quick to emerge. Others wonder if it was delivered, not born here, but carried here. Picture a night billions of years ago, when the air was thick with haze and the sea still steaming from volcanic heat. A meteorite strikes, shattering into fragments. Within those fragments are molecules already shaped elsewhere, molecules that have learned to copy themselves, to store information. They dissolve into the water, mingle with Earth's chemistry, and within time become the ancestors of everything that breathes, grows, and dreams today. But panspermia is only one possibility. Some take the idea further, imagining that seeding might not be accidental, that oceans, like ours, could be chosen deliberately by civilizations far older than our own. It is a daring thought, that Earth may be part of a galactic experiment, a living archive where genetic diversity is planted, left to unfold and observed. In this vision, the oceans are more than habitats. They are vaults, reservoirs, where alien code still lingers, mixed invisibly with our plankton, our microbes, our creatures of the abyss. We do not notice because we expect life to follow familiar rules. But what if some of the DNA in Earth's waters carries signatures not of this world? What if the ocean holds not only the memory of Earth's past, but the fingerprints of other stars? Even now, scientists find genes in deep-sea microbes that seem ancient, puzzling, resistant to classification. Some viruses in the ocean are so large and so complex that they blur the line between life and non-life, between something that evolved here and something that may have arrived from elsewhere. They pass unnoticed in seawater, invisible but countless, trillions upon trillions, drifting in every drop. Could some of them be relics of an experiment we did not design? Think of the ocean this way, as a library. The shelves are not wood, but water. The books are not paper, but genes. And in that library may be chapters written by hands we will never see, stories of life that began not here, but far away. If true, then every wave carries history older than Earth itself, each tide sweeping with the memory of another world. Speculation, yes, but it is speculation that fits the scale of the sea. When you stand at the edge of an ocean, the air damp and heavy, the horizon stretching farther than your eye can follow, it already feels bigger than one planet's story. It feels universal. You inhale the salt air, hear the slow pulse of waves, and something in you recognizes it as ancient, older than nations, older than continents, older even than Earth's sky. And so the question becomes, are our oceans simply ours, or are they part of a pattern larger than we can grasp? Perhaps the seas of Earth are one stanza in a galactic poem, repeated across moons and planets, each ocean a verse in the story of life itself. If so, then when we search the stars for company, we may not be searching for strangers. We may be searching for kin, cousins who swam into existence under different skies, but in seas that feel very much like our own. If the oceans are verses in a larger song of life, then the fossil record is the echo, a whisper from the past etched into stone. And when we listen closely, what we hear is not always smooth or gradual. Sometimes the ocean's history sounds like sudden crescendos, notes played so loudly and so unexpectedly that they transform the entire melody. One of the clearest examples is the Cambrian explosion, about 541 million years ago. For billions of years before, life had been small, simple, mostly invisible. Microbes ruled, quietly shaping air and water, while the seas were calm in their simplicity. And then, seemingly all at once, the ocean erupted into complexity. In rocks that once were seabeds, paleontologists find creatures unlike anything that came before. Trilobites with hard shells and compound eyes, Anomalocaris, a predator with segmented limbs and a ringed alien mouth, Hallucigenia, with its spines and tube-like legs, so strange that scientists once reconstructed it upside down. It is as though a curtain lifted and an entire cast of characters stepped onto the stage at the same moment. The sight of these fossils today can still feel uncanny. Their textures are pressed into stone, ridges, spines, the delicate impressions of gills and fins. You can run your fingers along the grooves and feel in the cool touch of the rock the ghost of an animal that once swam in waters 500 million years old. But what makes the Cambrian explosion puzzling is not only its variety, it is the speed. Complex body plans appear with no clear ancestors. Eyes, limbs, shells, and nervous systems seem to bloom almost overnight in geological time. Some scientists suggest that environmental changes, rising oxygen levels, shifting continents, sparked this burst of innovation. Others wonder if it hints at something more. Could the sudden arrival of so many designs be evidence of outside influence? If panspermia seeded Earth, perhaps it was during this moment that the seeds unfolded fully, spilling their diversity into the ocean all at once. And the Cambrian is not the only anomaly. Deeper in the record, there are fossils of soft-bodied creatures from the Ediacaran period 600 million years ago that defy classification. Some look like fronds or quilts, patterns pressed into stone that seem plant-like, yet lived on the sea floor. Others resemble discs, spirals, or branching networks, more like abstract symbols than animals. They appear suddenly, flourish for millions of years, then vanish without leaving clear descendants. To this day, biologists debate whether they represent early experiments of life or a completely separate lineage, one that ended without a trace. Even extinction events tell peculiar stories. When mass die-offs swept through Earth, the Ordovician, the Devonian, the Permian, life in the oceans often recovered in surprising ways. Certain groups seemed almost immune, while others vanished entirely. Some lineages appear to have survived by retreating into deep-sea refuges hidden from surface chaos, only to emerge again later as if nothing had happened. The fossil record leaves questions like ripples in stone. Why did some endure while others disappeared? Were they simply lucky? Or were the oceans home to reservoirs of life, shielded in their depths, carrying forms too strange to have yet been fully recognized? It is tempting to read these mysteries as hints, as shadows of something more. Perhaps the oceans are not only archives of Earth's life, but portals where influences, whether natural or foreign, enter the record suddenly, rewriting the course of evolution. When you hold a fossil, you hold time itself in your hands. The stone is cool, heavy, textured, with the imprint of a creature that lived and died before mountains rose, before forests spread, before humans dreamed. And in those textures are questions we have not answered. Why did life leap forward so suddenly? Why do some forms vanish without explanation? Why do others appear without roots? The oceans preserve these riddles because they are the planet's deepest memory. The waves erase footprints on the sand, but in their depths they carve stories into rock. And sometimes those stories hint that Earth's seas have been touched by forces we do not yet understand, perhaps even ones not entirely of this world. If the fossil record offers whispers of ancient mysteries, then today's oceans still speak in their own strange dialects. The discoveries of the modern age remind us that the seas are far from fully known. In fact, sometimes what they reveal feels less like science and more like glimpses into another world entirely. Take, for instance, the creatures uncovered in recent years by deep-sea expeditions. Some are so transparent that they seem sculpted from glass, their organs suspended inside like delicate ornaments. The barrel-eye fish drifts silently in the dark, with a head so clear you can see its eyes moving within, glowing faintly green as they gaze upward through its own skull. Others, like the comb jelly, ripple with iridescent light, not fire, but rainbows sliding silently across their bodies, a living aurora beneath the waves. To see them drift is to feel as though you are watching an alien ballet, graceful and incomprehensible, unfolding in slow motion. Then there are the colossal forms that seem to belong to myth. Giant squids, once relegated to sailors' tales, have now been filmed alive, their tentacles unfurling in the abyss like pale banners. Their eyes, larger than dinner plates, are adapted to catch the faintest traces of light. Perhaps the fleeting silhouette of predators we have yet to discover. Each time one of these giants rises into view, it is like a curtain lifting on a theater of the impossible. And not all discoveries are creatures. Some are viruses so vast and complex that they challenge the boundary between life and non-life. Found in seawater and in deep sediments, these giant viruses carry genetic material far richer than expected, some of it unlike any sequence we know. Their origins are uncertain, fragments of ancient lineages or echoes of something that does not belong exclusively to Earth. Scientists debate, but the possibility lingers like salt on the tongue. Even our instruments detect anomalies that raise questions. Research expeditions have logged sonar contacts too large to be schools of fish, too fast to be whales, too deliberate to be geological noise. Shapes flicker across the screens, massive, moving, then gone. Naval operators have reported similar readings where something vast shifts beneath their vessels, silent and untraceable once pursued. There are also sounds. The bloop, a low thunderous echo recorded in the 1990s, resonated across thousands of kilometers, as if something immense had called out from the deep. Most explanations reduce it to ice quakes, but some scientists admit that in theory a living creature could produce such a sound, though it would have to be larger than any known animal. Other recordings, the Julia, the train, the whistle, still resist certain explanations. They drift in the archives like unanswered letters, waiting for a reader who understands the language. When placed side by side, these anomalies begin to resemble fragments of a larger mosaic. Transparent predators, colossal squids, viruses with unearthly genetics, sonar contacts without names, and sounds without speakers. Each is strange, but perhaps not meaningless. Perhaps they are clues. And like scattered pieces of a puzzle, they may suggest that the ocean is not empty at all, but already inhabited by life, intelligent, foreign, or simply beyond the scope of what we currently recognize as alive. Imagine that for a moment. The sea as an archive of the unknown, a place where fragments of another intelligence brush against us, not enough to be seen clearly, but enough to remind us that we are not alone. To walk along a beach, to listen to the endless rhythm of waves, might then be to hear the breathing of another civilization, hidden in the dark water just beyond sight. If you were tasked with hiding an entire civilization on Earth, where would you go? The skies are watched, the continents are crowded with lights, roads, and restless eyes. Even deserts, though vast, reveal every shadow that crosses their surface. But the oceans are another story entirely. Standing on a shoreline at dusk, you might watch the horizon blur into twilight. The salt air clings to your skin, and the sound of waves folds into itself like a heartbeat in slow motion. You see only the surface, a rippling skin of silver and blue, but beneath there is depth upon depth, layer upon layer of hidden worlds. This is the first advantage of the sea, its power to conceal. The ocean is a natural cloak, one that resists even our most sophisticated tools. Satellites can photograph the smallest vehicles on a desert road, but they cannot see what lies a mile beneath the surface. Sonar offers echoes, shadows at best, but no true picture. Light itself is swallowed, vanishing into darkness after only a few hundred feet. Beyond that, even the brightest beams fade into black. To live beneath the waves is to live beyond human sight, wrapped in a curtain of water that no eye can pierce. For an alien intelligence, the sea would offer not just invisibility, but safety. At the bottom of the Mariana Trench, nearly 7 miles down, the pressure is so immense it could crush steel like paper. The cold is constant, the dark absolute, and yet those very conditions create protection. Few humans venture there, fewer still linger. A civilization capable of thriving in such depths would never need to fear discovery. The ocean itself would defend them, an ally as unyielding as stone. But concealment is only one part of the equation. The ocean is also abundant. Imagine drifting in a submersible at the edge of a hydrothermal vent. The water is black as night, yet ahead of you, pillars of mineral smoke rise like chimneys, glowing faintly with heat. Around them are forests of tube worms, crimson and white, swaying as if in a silent current of breath. Crabs scuttle, shrimp swarm, microbes bloom in unimaginable numbers. All of this life exists without a single ray of sunlight. The vent itself is a power plant, a fountain of minerals and energy rising endlessly from Earth's crust. To an advanced intelligence, such vents could be more than habitats. They could be fuel sources, factories, places where raw material is drawn up from the planet and transformed into energy. Add to this the endless movement of the tides, the ceaseless pull of currents that could be harnessed for power, and the ocean becomes not only a refuge, but a generator, a world that provides everything needed for survival. And then there is scale. The numbers themselves are staggering. Over 70% of Earth's surface is ocean, yet more than 80% of it remains unmapped. The volume of water is so vast that even if you placed every human-made structure inside, it would vanish into insignificance. You could hide mountain ranges, cities, entire networks of technology beneath the sea, and from the surface, nothing would change. The waves would roll on, the horizon would remain empty, and the secret would be safe. This is a lesson we ourselves have begun to understand. In times of war, submarines slipped silently through the depths, their movements hidden from radar, their very existence dependent on invisibility. Military planners spoke of silent service, a war fought in shadows beneath the waves. Today, there are whispers of undersea bases, experimental stations built on the seafloor, where operations can be conducted away from satellites and surveillance. Humanity has barely dipped its toes into this practice, but already we recognize its potential. Now imagine a civilization far older, far wiser, applying the same logic, not with trial and error, but with mastery. Their submarines might be cities. Their hidden bases might be entire continents of technology built into the seafloor. Their camouflage might not rely on silence alone, but on manipulating light, sound, and pressure until even our instruments mistake them for ordinary currents. They would not need to fight to remain unseen. The ocean itself would make them invisible. There is also a psychological advantage. Humans look to the stars for signs of life. We point telescopes outward, scan distant galaxies, send probes to other worlds. Rarely do we look inward, into the water that surrounds us. In this sense, the oceans are a blind spot, a place so familiar on the surface that we forget how alien they are within. For a hidden intelligence, this would be the greatest advantage of all. We are not looking where they are. Perhaps that is why stories of USOs, unidentified submersible objects, persist. Fishermen glimpse strange lights. Sonar operators hear movements too vast and too precise to be geological. Pilots watch objects plunge into the sea without a splash. Each account could be a fragment of the same truth, that the ocean is not just a frontier, but a stage where others already dwell. To stand at the water's edge and consider this is to feel a shift in scale. The sound of waves becomes less a rhythm of emptiness and more a language you cannot understand. The cool spray on your face feels like the breath of something immense, stirring in the dark below, and the horizon, stretching endlessly under the sky, becomes less a boundary and more a veil. Beyond it may lie civilizations, invisible not because they are far away, but because they are close and cloaked in the folds of the sea. What if the veil is not empty? What if the silence we hear when we listen to the ocean is not absence, but restraint? The thought lingers like the aftertaste of salt in the air. Perhaps the oceans are not wilderness at all, but occupied territory. Imagine the surface of the sea as a roof, a ceiling above a civilization we cannot see. Beneath it, Miles of water conceal cities of light woven into the seafloor, or networks of organisms so vast they span entire trenches. Perhaps they are not cities as we imagine them, with walls, streets, and towers, but living structures, glowing reefs, built with intelligence, pulsing with communication. To drift past them in a submersible would be like stumbling into a dream, the darkness alive with color, the silence vibrating with unspoken meaning. Even if these civilizations exist at the microbial scale, the implication is profound. They might not build monuments or ships, but they could shape ecosystems, directing the flow of currents, influencing chemistry, steering the balance of Earth's climate in ways we mistake for natural. If microbes already form the base of all our food chains, then intelligent microbial colonies, foreign in origin but thriving here, could be silently running the planet, their decisions written in chemical whispers instead of laws. And if they are animal, more complex, more visible, then the chilling thought follows: we may not be the first intelligent beings on this planet. Our claim to ownership might be an illusion, a story we tell ourselves because we live on the surface. From their perspective, we are the noisy intruders, the latecomers who build on land, but rarely dive into the deeper realms. To them, humanity's history could look like a fleeting experiment, barely a blink against the backdrop of their long dominion. If this is true, then every beach we walk, every coastline we admire, may not be borders of human territory, but edges of something else's domain. And that brings us to the most haunting question. What would happen if discovery were made? Would it be cooperation, a meeting of worlds, an exchange of knowledge across currents and languages? Picture humans descending in submersibles, their floodlights sweeping across a trench where alien beings wait, extending luminous gestures in welcome. The ocean would become not a frontier but a bridge, linking two intelligences in shared curiosity. Or would it be conflict? Would our expansion, our mining of the seabed, our sonar pulses, our nets and drills, be seen not as harmless industry, but as trespass, even aggression? Imagine the ocean answering back, not with storms or waves, but with deliberate action. Fleets disabled, submarines lost, coasts unsettled by forces that move unseen. To us it would feel like natural disaster. To them it would be defense. Or perhaps it would not be either. Perhaps discovery would not bring war or peace, but something stranger, a rewriting of human history itself. We would have to face the truth that Earth was never solely ours, that our species is not the pinnacle of this planet, but one of its tenants. Religions would reconsider their stories. Nations would reconsider their borders. Our place in the cosmos would shift overnight, not because we found life on another planet, but because we realized we had been sharing our own all along. To sit with this thought is to feel both wonder and unease. The sea, which has always seemed like a backdrop, becomes the main stage. The waves we watch from shore are no longer barriers, but curtains, drawn over play we have not yet been invited to join. And maybe that is why the ocean feels so haunting when you stand beside it. The endless horizon, the rhythm of waves, the cool spray on your face, all of it whispers a truth we cannot yet prove. The ocean may not be empty space waiting for us to explore. It may be someone's home. For all our satellites, for all our telescopes, for all the maps we unfurl across glowing screens, the truth is humbling. The ocean remains our greatest blind spot. We have mapped the surfaces of the moon and Mars in greater detail than the world just beneath our feet. Less than 20% of Earth's seafloor has been charted with precision. That means over 80% of the ocean, mountains, valleys, ridges, plains, lies in shadow, a vast wilderness that exists only as guesswork. Imagine gazing out at the sea from a cliff on a clear day. The horizon stretches endless, the air damp and cool, carrying the faint tang of salt. Waves sparkle in sunlight, each one breaking with a crisp hiss before folding back into the whole. It looks familiar, comforting, even tame, but beneath that glittering surface the world is not calm. It is immense, dark, and almost entirely unknown. The Mariana Trench plunges nearly 7 miles deep, so far down that if Mount Everest were placed inside, its peak would still be a mile beneath the waves. Only a handful of human-made vessels have ever reached its floor, and each descent feels like a journey to another planet. Windows frosting with cold, steel groaning under pressure, the lights illuminating only a small cone of water, while the rest remains an infinite black. And yet, that trench is but one feature among thousands. Across the sea floor stretch mid-ocean ridges, longer than any mountain range on land, volcanic vents erupting into total darkness, and plateaus the size of continents, all hidden from direct view. It is not just the terrain that escapes us, but the life. Each new expedition into the deep seems to return with creatures no one expected. Fish with faces of glass, shrimp that glow like lanterns, worms that live in boiling water, microbes that dine on methane bubbling from the crust. Each discovery is a reminder that the ocean is not only unexplored, it is unimagined. What else could exist in the 80% we have never touched? Our blindness is not only scientific, it is psychological. We treat the oceans as though they are known, as though the blue on a map represents a certainty. But that blue is a mask, a simple fill color laid across a world of mountains and abysses, forests and plains, cities of coral and deserts of sand. We are like children standing at the edge of a great library, tracing our fingers across the spines of books we have never opened, convinced we already know the stories within, and into this blindness the possibility of other intelligences slips easily. If there are ecosystems we have not seen, if there are trenches we have not entered, if there are entire ranges we have not mapped, then what else hides there? Perhaps whole kingdoms of life, their societies unfolding in silence. Perhaps intelligences that have learned to navigate currents the way we navigate roads, who speak in flashes of light or in vibrations we mistake for background noise. The ocean has always been a mirror for mystery. Sailors once set out across it with no charts, guided only by stars and instinct, convinced that dragons or gods awaited beyond the horizon. Today our ships are steel, our satellites precise, and yet the mystery remains. We still do not know what breathes in the darkest trenches, what songs might echo in frequencies we cannot hear, what structures might lie in canyons no human eye has seen. To call the ocean our blind spot is not to diminish our science, but to remind us of scale. The earth is vast, and our exploration of it is still in its infancy. The seas are not empty, they are undiscovered, and in their uncharted spaces lies room enough for secrets, not small secrets, but vast ones, entire histories we have not yet uncovered, entire neighbors we may not yet have met. So when you stand on a beach, when the surf curls around your ankles and the horizon glimmers in fading light, remember this: what lies beyond that surface is not absence, it is mystery. It is a wilderness so great that it humbles even our boldest achievements, and it is in that wilderness, in that blind spot, that the possibility of hidden life, even hidden civilizations, may quietly exist, waiting for us to notice. Every so often, when we dare to peer deeper into the seas, we brush against the edge of something strange, moments so fleeting and inexplicable that they slip between science and story. These are not myths whispered by sailors, nor legends etched into maps, but encounters recorded by machines, remembered by explorers, or captured briefly on film. Each one feels like a curtain drawn back for only a second, offering a glimpse of a reality just beyond our reach. Picture a submersible, its lights glowing faintly in the abyss. The water presses heavy against the hull, the air inside tinged with metal and salt, every sound magnified. The groan of the frame, the hiss of oxygen, the distant crackle of shrimp beyond the glass. Suddenly, the lights sweep across something unfamiliar. Not a fish, not coral, something that seems to shift form, its body translucent, its edges dissolving into the darkness. The crew blinks, adjusts the cameras, and it's gone. The ocean has a way of erasing its secrets quickly, as if revealing just enough to remind us we are not alone, before retreating back into silence. There are sonar contacts too, blips and echoes that seem to belong to something large, larger than whales, faster than submarines. Operators have watched these signatures slide across their screens, accelerating in ways no known creature could, only to vanish when pursued. Some are written off as equipment error, but not all. A few remain unsolved, like faint fingerprints pressed into the data, belonging to something unseen. And then there are the animals themselves, behaving in ways that hint at disturbances beyond our understanding. Whales have been recorded altering their migration patterns suddenly, entire pods turning course, as if responding to a signal inaudible to us. Dolphins have been seen gathering in unusual formations, circling as though listening, waiting before scattering again. Sharks sometimes vanish from entire regions for months, only to return without explanation, their absence marked only by silence. These patterns do not always align with currents, climate, or prey. They suggest perhaps that something else is moving in the deep, and that the great animals of the sea are aware of it before we are. Divers too tell of odd encounters, a shimmer in the water that feels alive, though nothing moves, a vibration through the body, like standing too close to a speaker, but with no sound, lights that flicker far below, too deep to be bioluminescent fish, too steady to be reflections. Some speak of feeling watched, a sensation so strong it lingers even after surfacing, as if the sea itself were an intelligence pressing against their thoughts. One of the most famous mysteries is the bloop, a sound recorded in 1997, so loud it echoed across thousands of kilometers of ocean. Its signature resembled that of an animal, but no creature known to science could produce such a call. Ice shifts and quakes were later suggested as explanations, but the possibility remains. If it was biological, then it belonged to something vast, something larger than anything we have ever seen. For a brief moment, the ocean spoke in a voice too deep for us to place, and then it fell silent again. These encounters, scattered and unexplained, feel like fragments of a larger pattern. What if they are not accidents? What if they are brushes with something more, a test, a signal, an observation? Perhaps alien life in the oceans has already noticed us, and what we call anomalies are its quiet ways of measuring, of learning, of deciding how close to come. Imagine standing on the deck of a ship at night, the air cool and heavy, stars glittering above. The water around you is black, smooth, endless. Then a glow appears beneath the surface, faint at first, then brighter, rippling like liquid lightning. It moves with purpose, not drifting like plankton, but turning, circling, as though aware of you. Before anyone can react, it fades, leaving only the gentle slap of waves against the hull. Did you witness a rare natural event, Or did you glimpse a presence testing the boundary between their world and ours? To dwell on these questions is to feel the hairs rise on the back of your neck, but also to feel awe that the ocean, so close and familiar, might still guard such mysteries. Encounters at the edge of knowledge remind us that the line between science and wonder is thin, and that in the deep it may not exist at all. Perhaps we are not waiting to discover alien life. Perhaps it is already here, brushing against us in the dark, leaving only hints, a shadow on sonar, a song in the deep, a light in the night sea, waiting for the moment when we are ready to understand. For most of human history, the ocean was a world of mystery that resisted every attempt to know it. We could cross its surface in ships, chart the winds, and follow the stars above it, but what lay beneath remained unknowable. The waves were like a wall, reflecting the sky and hiding everything below. But little by little, we have chipped at that wall, building tools that allow us to press our senses into the deep, to listen, to touch, to glimpse the hidden. The first of these tools were submersibles, fragile metal shells, lowered into darkness. Imagine being inside one, the air heavy with the smell of oil and metal, the walls trembling under pressure as you descend. Light fades quickly, the blue turning to indigo, then to black. The temperature drops, the glass fogs with condensation, and every creak of the hull reminds you of the crushing weight outside. Yet then, in the beam of your lights, a new world appears. Creatures drift like ghosts through the water, some glowing with their own light, some transparent as glass, others flashing briefly before vanishing again. It is like stepping into a dream, a place where the rules of daylight no longer apply. Then came sonar, a different kind of vision. Instead of light, it used sound, sending pulses into the water and listening for the echoes. Imagine the hum of a ship at sea, its instruments pinging the depths, the sound rippling outward like invisible rings. When the echoes return, they sketch the unseen, mountains rising higher than the Rockies, trenches deeper than Everest is tall, entire landscapes hidden under the weight of water. Sonar is like pressing your ear to the chest of the earth and hearing its heartbeat, slow and immense. Above, satellites orbit, tracing gravity itself to see what we cannot. They measure the tiny bulges and dips in the ocean's surface, ripples so slight they are invisible to the human eye. But in those ripples are clues. Hidden ridges, volcanoes, plains stretching across the seafloor. With their help we begin to realize that the ocean floor is not smooth, but as dramatic and varied as the continents, and yet even satellites only hint at detail. What they show us are outlines, not faces, shadows, not names. Now our explorers are no longer bound by human endurance. Deep-sea robots roam where no diver can survive. Some crawl along the bottom on tracks, their lights cutting across alien terrain. Others glide weightless through the mid-water, cameras recording every shimmer of light, every flicker of movement. To watch their footage is to feel like a visitor in another world, a jellyfish pulsing like a living lantern, fields of tube worms swaying in boiling currents, translucent predators hovering with slow grace, their bodies shimmering with rainbow light. Each discovery is a revelation that our own planet still hides landscapes and life forms more alien than science fiction. But perhaps the most transformative change is only just beginning. Artificial intelligence is being woven into these machines, giving them not only sensors, but decisions. Imagine thousands of autonomous explorers drifting into the abyss, each one capable of adapting, responding, and learning without waiting for instructions from the surface. They could fan out across the trenches, map ridges with precision, follow strange signals, and even interact with creatures too elusive for us to track. For the first time, the deep would be watched continuously, not in rare glimpses, but in constant presence. What might they find? Perhaps a vast reef of living light, stretching across a canyon like a constellation under the sea. Perhaps an organism spread across miles, pulsing with a rhythm that is not random but patterned, a form of thought hidden in plain sight. Perhaps an intelligence already aware of us, responding not with aggression, but with curiosity, watching these mechanical visitors with the same fascination we watch them. And yet, the thought is unsettling, for if we do unleash swarms of machines into the deep, we may not simply be observers, we may be intruders. What happens when we finally peel back every shadow and leave no corner untouched? What if the ocean's secrecy is not an accident, but a choice, a boundary respected by life that prefers to remain unseen? For now, though, our tools are still young, and the ocean still keeps most of its secrets. Each descent, each sonar echo, each satellite pass adds another piece to the puzzle, but the picture is far from whole. We stand at the edge of something vast, holding the first lanterns against the dark, waiting to see what stirs when we shine them deeper. And maybe, just maybe, what stirs will not be unfamiliar at all, but the first clear glimpse of neighbors who have been here far longer than we have, hidden not among the stars but beneath the waves. It is tempting to believe that with enough machines, enough sensors, enough light, we will uncover all the ocean's secrets, that one day the deep will surrender its mysteries like pages of a book, opened and read until nothing is left unseen. But perhaps this is only a dream of human certainty. Perhaps the truth is stranger and more humbling, that even with all our tools, we may never truly see what dwells beneath. Consider how alien life in the ocean might choose, or be designed, to remain invisible. Some creatures could be so small, so subtle, that they blend into the very chemistry of seawater, a microbial haze stretching across thousands of miles, pulsing not as individuals, but as collectives. To us they are invisible, indistinguishable from the background, yet within themselves they may be exchanging information, weaving thoughts across colonies, their intelligence spread thin and wide like mist. Others might hide through camouflage beyond our imagination. The cuttlefish already shifts its colors, textures, even shapes in the blink of an eye, mimicking rocks, sand, or coral. An alien life form might take this further, not only blending with its surroundings, but with the water itself, bending light and scattering sound until it becomes indistinguishable from the medium around it. To look directly at it would be to see nothing at all, as though it were a hole in perception, a presence perfectly erased. There is also the possibility of forms we do not even recognize as life. Intelligence, to us, wears a face or a form, neurons firing in a brain, bodies moving with intent. But what if alien intelligence in the ocean takes a different path? What if it lives in networks of minerals grown into fractal shapes, or in vibrations of sound that ripple endlessly through the water, or in chemical signals drifting in patterns we dismiss as noise? To such beings, our eyes and instruments might be useless. We would pass through their world blind, never knowing we were surrounded. History humbles us here. For most of human existence, we did not know that whales sang, that dolphins clicked in patterns of language, that coral reefs were alive with polyps building cities of limestone. These truths were invisible until we built the right sensors, listened with the right ears, looked with the right eyes. What else are we missing still? Imagine standing on the deck of a ship at night, the stars scattered across the sky, the sea stretching endless and black below. You hear the slap of waves against the hull, the cry of a gull circling unseen. But what if in that same moment entire conversations are happening in the deep, voices of beings who do not use words or sounds, but pulses of electricity or ultraviolet light, invisible to your eyes? You would never know. To you the ocean would be silent. To them it would be alive with song. Even our machines may not bridge this gap. Submersibles see only with lights that reach a few dozen meters. Sonar listens only to certain frequencies. Satellites trace only broad ripples, not the fine lacework of detail. Our tools are powerful, yes, but narrow, limited by the ways we already understand perception. What if truly alien life exists in a spectrum we have not yet conceived? What if it requires entirely new senses? Senses we do not even have words for, to perceive? Perhaps this is why the ocean feels so enigmatic even now, not because it is empty, but because it is too full, too rich, too layered, too strange for us to comprehend with the crude senses we bring, like trying to read a symphony with your eyes closed, or to watch a painting with your ears. The information may be all around us, but we are not yet tuned to its frequency. And maybe this is not failure, but design. Perhaps the ocean itself conspires to protect its secrets. Its darkness, its pressure, its shifting currents, all form barriers, not only against our bodies, but against our perception. A safeguard, a filter, ensuring that whatever dwells in the deep remains beyond reach until we are ready, or until it decides to be seen. To walk along a shoreline with this thought is to feel the sea differently. The foam curling around your ankles no longer feels like simple water. It feels like a boundary, the thinnest edge of a reality layered with other presences hidden just beyond the limits of your sight. You breathe in the salt, hear the endless rhythm of waves and wonder, is the ocean silent because it is empty or because we are deaf to its voices? And so we may live our entire history on this planet without ever knowing who else shares it with us. Our tools may grow sharper, our maps more detailed, our machines more intelligent, and still the true neighbors of the deep may remain unseen, not because they are absent, but because they are invisible in ways we cannot yet overcome. The ocean does not need to hide them from us. We hide ourselves, through the limits of our senses, through the narrowness of our imagination. And until we widen both, the mysteries of the deep may remain just that. Mysteries, vast and unsolved, whispering to us only in dreams. Long before sonar traced the ridges of the seafloor, before submersibles cut their beams into the abyss, humanity already suspected that the ocean was not empty. The earliest civilizations stood at the edge of water and listened to its voice, a low, endless murmur, as if the sea itself were whispering stories. From those whispers came legends of kingdoms drowned, cities swallowed, and realms still alive beneath the waves. Atlantis is perhaps the most famous of these stories. Plato described it as a mighty island empire, a place of wealth and power, until it fell out of favor with the gods and was swallowed by the sea in a single day and night. To imagine Atlantis is to picture shining towers reflected in blue water, wide avenues lined with marble, the scent of salt carried through its harbors. But more haunting than the image of its greatness is the image of its disappearance. A city extinguished not by war or time, but by water rising over rooftops, waves claiming stone until all that remained was silence. Other cultures tell their own versions. In Tamil traditions, there is Kumari Kandam, a vast land said to lie beneath the Indian Ocean, a cradle of lost knowledge and culture. In Polynesia, there are tales of Hiva, islands swallowed by the sea, leaving only fragments scattered across the Pacific. In Japan, stories speak of Yonaguni, an underwater monument with steps and terraces that some claim are man-made, others natural, a structure blurred between geology and architecture, as though the ocean itself sculpted a memory of a city. Lemuria, Mu, Lyonesse, the names vary, but the pattern remains. Across the world, cultures separated by oceans themselves share stories of lands drowned, civilizations hidden beneath the surface. These myths endure not only because they explain loss, but because they resonate with a deeper suspicion that the sea has taken more than it reveals, and that what it hides may not be gone, only unseen. Now imagine these myths as more than metaphor. Perhaps they are not tales of punishment or allegory, but distorted memories of encounters. A sailor glimpsing strange lights beneath the surface might return to his people, speaking of a city aglow in the deep. A fisherman who sees a figure unlike any known creature might describe it as a god or a dweller from a drowned kingdom. Over centuries, such sightings blur, taking root as myth, but at their heart may lie fragments of truth, encounters with intelligences that chose not to rise fully into our world, but to remain below. The endurance of these stories suggests something powerful. Myths fade when they fail to resonate, but tales of sunken civilizations continue to surface across time, across culture, across continents. They tap into a primal human awareness that the ocean does not simply erase, it conceals, it keeps, and what it keeps, it may keep alive in ways we do not understand. Consider, too, how many human cities now lie beneath the sea, drowned not by myth but by time. Off the coast of India lies Dwarka, a site of submerged structures that some believe inspired tales of Krishna's city. In the Mediterranean, fragments of ancient harbors, roads, and temples lie hidden under shallow waves, reminders that the boundary between land and sea is fragile. If our civilizations can sink and be forgotten, why not others, older, stranger, perhaps not entirely human? To walk along a quiet shoreline at dusk is to feel this unease. The sky glows rose and gold, gulls wheel overhead, and the tide slides in with its slow hiss. Yet as you watch the waves curl, you cannot help but wonder what rests just beyond. Not only wrecks of ships or bones of sailors, but entire worlds submerged, unseen, yet not gone. The ocean is a graveyard, yes, but it may also be a vault, one that does not bury but preserves. And so myths of sunken civilizations are not only about the past, they are about possibility. They suggest that beneath the familiar surface lies a second history of Earth, a parallel story in which other cultures, human, alien, or something in between, continue to exist, waiting. And when we tell these stories, when we whisper the names Atlantis, Lemuria, Mu, what we are really saying is this: the oceans hold secrets too great to ignore, and perhaps one day those secrets will rise again. If the oceans truly hold other intelligences, perhaps they are not strangers to us. Perhaps they have already brushed against our story, not in ways that declare themselves with clarity, but in subtler, quieter patterns, a guiding hand hidden in waves and myths, a whisper woven into culture, a presence shaping us from the shadows of the sea. From the earliest days, sailors told of companions who guided their journeys. In Polynesian traditions, dolphins appeared to lead canoes through dangerous reefs, as if they understood the currents better than any map. Norse legends speak of sea spirits, warning crews before storms struck. their voices carried on the wind, or their forms glimpsed in foam. In the Mediterranean, ancient mariners described strange lights in the water, St. Elmo's fire dancing blue on their masts, or glowing orbs drifting beneath their ships, leading them safely to shore. To science, these may be electrical discharges, bioluminescent plankton. But to the sailors who felt their lives saved, they were not accidents, they were encounters. Art, too, may carry traces of these meetings. Think of the strange sea creatures, carved into temple walls, painted into manuscripts, drawn with eyes too human, with gestures too deliberate. Medieval maps filled their margins with leviathans and half-human forms rising from waves. Were these exaggerations of whales and squids, or memories of something more? The fact that these shapes appear across cultures suggests a shared source, an echo repeated wherever humans touched the edge of the sea. Even religion holds whispers of watery guides. The Dogon people of Mali tell of the Nomo, amphibious beings who descended from the sky and emerged from the waters to teach humanity. In Mesopotamia, Oans, a half-fish figure, rose from the Persian Gulf to give laws and knowledge. In Greece, Poseidon ruled the seas, his temper shaping earthquakes and tides. In each of these myths, wisdom comes not from the stars above, but from the waters below, as though the ocean itself were a teacher, its emissaries stepping briefly into human lives. What if these stories are not inventions but interpretations? A fisherman sees a creature too graceful to be fish, too purposeful to be accident, and his people remember it as a god. A prophet dreams of voices from the sea, and generations later they are written as revelation. If alien intelligences have lived within our oceans, their influence might not appear as ships or weapons, but as inspiration, nudges of thought, moments of awe, bursts of creativity that flow into art, myth, and belief. Speculate further. Perhaps their contact has always been symbiotic, never direct domination, never full revelation. Instead, it may be subtle, offering guidance in exchange for respect, allowing humanity to grow while steering it gently away from ruin. When a lost sailor follows a pod of dolphins to shore, when a culture invents navigation inspired by the stars, but tested against currents, when an artist paints a vision of beings rising from the deep, could it be that the ocean itself is shaping us through hidden hands? Symbiosis need not be biological alone. It can be cultural, spiritual, intellectual. Humanity may have been walking with unseen companions all along, companions who chose not to reveal themselves fully, but to touch us through suggestion, leaving just enough wonder to guide us without overwhelming us. And if that is true, then the ocean is not only a boundary, it is a bridge, a conduit through which we and they exchange meaning, though we do not recognize it as such. Perhaps the myths of Atlantis and Lemuria, the lights that guided ships, the creatures carved into temples, all belong to the same conversation, a dialogue between species, stretched across centuries, carried in salt water and memory. To stand beside the ocean with this thought is to feel it differently. The wind carries not just the smell of salt, but the sense of breath from something vast. The surf does not sound like chaos, but like language you cannot quite translate. And the horizon does not feel like the end of the world, but like the edge of a relationship, one that has always been there, quiet, patient, and waiting for us to notice. Could alien life already be guiding us, shaping us from the shadows of the sea, perhaps, and perhaps we have always felt it, even if we have not yet learned to say it aloud. Imagine the world waking up to the news that alien life has been found, not on Mars, not on distant exoplanets, but here, in the waters that have always surrounded us. The announcement would ripple across every shore like a tide, a revelation too vast to be contained by any single discipline. At first, there would be disbelief. How could it be that in all our searching, in decades of scanning skies and dreaming of distant stars, the truth was waiting beneath our feet? Yet soon the shock would give way to questions, scientific questions that strike at the very core of what it means to be alive and what it means to belong to this planet. Would this discovery mean that life began twice on Earth, two separate genesis events arising from the same oceans? If so, then biology itself would have to be rewritten. For centuries, we have assumed a single tree of life, branching from one ancient ancestor. But if alien beings dwell in the ocean, microbes with different genetic codes, creatures built on unfamiliar chemistry, organisms whose cells carry instructions unlike DNA, then Earth does not hold one tree, but two. Two roots, two beginnings, two separate stories of life unfolding in the same waters. Or perhaps the finding would suggest something even greater, that life here was seeded from elsewhere, that the spark did not ignite alone on Earth, but was carried in ice, in rock, in comets that fell like messengers from the sky. If so, then life on Earth is not only Earth's own. It is part of a larger lineage, a cosmic family tree stretching across worlds. Every cell in your body, every breath of air, every step you take would connect back not only to Earth, but to the stars themselves. Scientists would scramble to compare. Microscopes would turn toward the alien cells, scanning for molecules, searching for familiar patterns of proteins or sugars. Would they share our amino acids, our basic building blocks, or would they be assembled from something else entirely? Silicon scaffolds instead of carbon, or exotic elements drawn from vents deep in the crust. If the codes were different, then the very definition of life would stretch, becoming something larger, more inclusive than we have ever imagined. Taxonomy, the science of naming and classifying life, would be shattered. How do you place something that does not belong anywhere on the chart? A creature without ancestors, without familiar kin? It would not fit into kingdoms of phyla, not into animal or plant or fungus. It would need a new category, perhaps one that does not even exist yet, a branch of existence set apart. And that act alone, the naming of it, would remind us that we are not the only storytellers of biology, but participants in something older, stranger, and shared. Evolution, too, would need to be reimagined. If Earth has hosted not one but two independent lines of life, then evolution is not a fragile accident. It is a force, a universal principle like gravity or magnetism, arising wherever conditions allow. Life would not be rare but inevitable. Every ocean in the cosmos would be a potential cradle, every planet with water a possible partner in the great experiment. And what of medicine, of chemistry, of technology? To study alien organisms would be to open vaults of knowledge beyond our own. Their cells might resist pressures that crush steel, their enzymes might thrive in boiling water, their membranes might channel energy in ways our biology has never dreamed. Every sample would be a library, every encounter a chance to learn, not just about them, but about what is possible. Yet the most profound change would be philosophical. The discovery would blur the boundary between Earth life and alien life. For if the alien is here, woven into our oceans, then what does it mean to call ourselves native? Perhaps none of us are fully of this planet. Perhaps we are hybrids of cosmic chemistry, heirs to seeds carried across light years. Imagine holding a vial of seawater after such a discovery, watching it glisten in the light. Once you would have thought it ordinary, salt, plankton, microbes, but now you would see it differently. Within that vial could be not only familiar life, but alien bloodlines older than humanity, older than continents, older perhaps than the earth itself. And suddenly every wave crashing against the shore, every drop of rain returning to the sea, every tide rising and falling, all of it becomes communion, an endless exchange between what we thought was ours and what we now know we share. Science would not simply add new chapters to its books, it would be forced to start again, to tell a story not of one world, but of many woven together, of oceans as bridges rather than boundaries, and at the heart of it all would linger one haunting truth: we are not alone, and perhaps we never were. The day humanity learns that alien life swims in our oceans would not be remembered only by scientists. It would ripple outward into every corner of human thought, philosophy, religion, art, politics, each grappling with the sudden truth that Earth is not solely ours. Some would fall to their knees in reverence. The sight of beings that have shared the planet unseen for ages might be taken as revelation, proof of gods made manifest in water. Pilgrimages might form to coasts where sightings occurred. Waves crashing on shorelines could be recast as hymns, each tide a reminder of divine presence. Ancient myths of sea deities and water spirits would be revisited, no longer dismissed as superstition, but reconsidered as memories of real contact, preserved in sacred story. Others would respond with fear. To them, the ocean aliens would not be teachers, but trespassers. If Earth is shared, then who holds dominion? For centuries, we have told ourselves that humanity is the steward of this planet, its pinnacle. But the discovery of oceanic intelligence would fracture that belief. Nations might argue that their coasts, their waters, their rights are threatened. Military fleets might patrol with suspicion, sonar not listening for whales, but for whispers of unknown craft. The salt air itself could become charged with unease, every swell of water carrying the possibility of contact or conflict. Religions would face profound questions. If life beyond humanity exists not in the stars but beneath our waves, what does that mean for the stories we hold sacred? Some faiths might embrace it, interpreting these beings as part of creation's vastness, evidence that the divine is richer than we imagined. Others might see it as a challenge, rewriting doctrine to preserve human uniqueness. The debate would spill into temples, mosques, churches, and shrines, filling them with the sound of questions carried like waves echoing against stone. Identity itself would shift. For millennia, we have drawn a boundary between us and the world, we the humans and it the earth. But if the oceans hold intelligences older than cities, then us and it are no longer separate. We would be forced to admit that humanity is not the center of the story, but one character among many, living on a stage much larger than we believed. For some this would be humbling, even liberating. For others it would feel like loss, the erosion of a belief that we were alone, exceptional, chosen. Politics too would tremble. How does one negotiate with neighbors hidden beneath the sea? Could there be treaties, agreements, shared boundaries? Would nations cooperate to reach out, or compete to control the first contact? The salt spray of diplomacy might feel more like storm surf than calm waters, each government straining to claim what no one can truly own. And yet, amid the fear, the reverence, the upheaval, there might also come unity. For nothing brings humanity together like a shared horizon. To know we are not alone, to see the ocean not as an empty border, but as a living bridge, might shift our divisions. Wars over land might shrink in importance, compared to the question of how to live alongside those who have always been here. The boundaries between nations could seem petty when measured against the vastness of beings who move through trenches deeper than mountains, who see time in spans longer than civilizations. Imagine, then, a night after such discovery. A person in Tokyo stands at the shore, listening to the surf. A person in Lagos does the same. A family in Lima, a wanderer in Reykjavik, a child in Sydney, all listening to the same ocean, knowing now that its voice is not empty. The knowledge itself becomes a bond, a reminder that before we are citizens of nations, we are citizens of a planet that is shared. But the question remains, will we embrace that bond, or will we fracture under the weight of it? Awe and fear are tides that rise together. In the spray of revelation, we may find unity, or division, or something stranger, a new culture that grows around the acceptance that the sea is not ours, but shared ground between species, and perhaps that is the most haunting consequence of all, that the ocean, which has always divided us with its breadth, may in the end be what unites us, not because we conquer it, but because we learn we are not its only inhabitants. If life beyond our own truly dwells in the oceans, then perhaps it is not idle or hidden. Perhaps it is active, shaping, regulating, influencing the very systems we depend on without us ever realizing it. We imagine alien influence as something dramatic, ships descending from the sky or signals etched in light. But what if it's quieter than that? What if it is in the salt spray on your lips, in the fog that rolls in at dawn, in the tides that tug at the moon? Consider the plankton, invisible to the naked eye, yet the lungs of the planet. They breathe out more oxygen than all the forests combined, every second filling the air with the very substance we need to live. Their blooms, delicate and vast, ripple across oceans like shifting tapestries, greens and blues glowing in satellite images. What if these patterns are not entirely random? What if, hidden within the rise and fall of plankton populations, there is a subtle hand at work, alien organisms nudging the balance, ensuring oxygen flows steadily, ensuring that Earth remains habitable not only for them, but for us? Imagine swimming in such a bloom, the water thick with tiny forms, the sun scattering into emerald light, the air above shimmering with salt. You would not see the intelligence, not feel the adjustment, but it could be there, woven into the chemistry, guiding the rhythm of Earth's breath. Or consider ocean chemistry itself. The seas are not static. They are engines, cycling carbon, regulating heat, balancing acidity. A shift of only a fraction can alter climate, tilt ecosystems toward collapse or renewal. What if alien organisms dwell in this cycle, acting like invisible custodians? Perhaps vast colonies in trenches absorb toxins or distribute minerals through hidden currents, or even release compounds that temper storms. To us they would appear as anomalies, unexplained fluctuations in data, but to them it would be maintenance, tending the planet the way a gardener tends a soil. There are already hints that we may not fully understand what moves beneath the surface. Whales, for instance, stir nutrients as they dive and rise, creating vertical currents that fertilize waters far from land. Could there be other beings, unseen, playing larger roles? Perhaps the flicker of bioluminescence in deep waters is not just beauty but function. Signals that coordinate ecosystems, pulses of light guiding migrations, or even chemical exchanges invisible to us. If so, then our survival may already depend on these unseen agents. Every breath we take, every harvest grown under the sun, every calm season between storms, all of it might rest on the presence of intelligences we do not recognize. To walk along the shore with this thought is to feel the air differently. Each inhalation is not merely oxygen, but a gift, a silent exchange with the ocean. And what if these influences stretch across time, not just moments, perhaps mass extinctions, the sudden flourishing of life after long silences, the resilience of oceans after catastrophe? All were not accidents, but adjustments, gentle corrections made by alien hands deep below, ensuring that the balance tilted back toward life rather than death. The Cambrian explosion, when life suddenly bloomed into diversity, may have been sparked not only by chemistry, but by intervention, a push, a release of genetic seeds hidden in the depths. We might even wonder whether climate itself, the rhythm of ice ages, the shift of winds, the pulse of currents, carries traces of this influence. If beings have lived in oceans longer than we have walked on land, perhaps they have always been here, tuning Earth like an instrument, ensuring the symphony of life continues. And yet, this possibility carries both wonder and unease. Because if alien life helps maintain balance, what happens if we disrupt it? Our mining, our plastics, our noise may not just harm ecosystems, but interfere with intelligences that already work to preserve them. We may be shaking the hand that steadies us, pulling threads from a weave we do not yet understand. To imagine this is to feel the sea not only as water, but as presence. The salt tang in the wind feels like breath shared. The crash of waves becomes less random, more deliberate, as though each tide is a movement in an ancient performance. And standing there, you cannot help but think, perhaps we are not simply guests on earth, but beneficiaries of caretakers we cannot yet see. If that is true, then the story of humanity changes again. We are not only children of earth, but partners in a pact written in water, a pact we did not sign, but one that sustains us nonetheless. The ocean feels eternal, infinite, unshakable. To stand at its edge and listen to the hiss of surf is to feel as though nothing we do could ever truly disturb it. And yet, that illusion of permanence may be fragile. For in the last century, we have begun pressing deeper, probing, mining, extracting, hammering the silence with noise. And in doing so, we may already be trespassing on lives we do not understand. Picture the ocean floor, once a sanctuary untouched by light. Now machines crawl across it like metallic crabs, their arms scooping sediments rich with rare metals. Plumes of mud rise in their wake, drifting like smoke through the currents, suffocating the fragile gardens of sponges and corals that took centuries to grow. The water becomes murky, the silence broken by the grinding of engines. If alien ecosystems dwell there, delicate and ancient, what must they feel in that disturbance? To us it is extraction. To them it may be desecration, a wound opened in a cathedral of darkness. Then there is sonar, a tool that has become a weapon. Ships send out blasts of sound so powerful they shake the water like thunderclaps. Whales flee in panic, dolphins strand themselves, their navigation shattered by the noise. But what of other beings, those we have not yet named? Creatures that might communicate in frequencies we cannot hear, their languages scrambled, their societies fractured by pulses we did not intend as violence, but which strike like lightning through their homes. Imagine trying to live in a world where every hour the sky split open with explosions, where every conversation was drowned in static. That is what our technologies may already be imposing on the deep. Pollution, too, seeps into every current. Plastics swirl in gyres the size of continents, their fragments sinking into trenches, entering the bellies of fish, drifting into the tissues of beings we cannot see. Oil spills blacken coasts, fertilizers bleed into rivers, dead zones spread like bruises beneath the surface. If alien organisms exist, they are forced to adapt or perish to changes they never invited. Perhaps some retreat into deeper silence, perhaps others rage in ways we do not yet recognize. Their protests disguised as anomalies in currents, as blooms of strange microbes, as storms that seem more frequent, more ferocious. And this raises a terrifying thought. What if our actions are not only harming ecosystems, but provoking intelligences? Humanity has always imagined first contact as a moment we choose, a signal received, a ship landed, a discovery made. But what if instead the first undeniable contact comes as consequence, as retaliation? If we dig too greedily, if we poison too recklessly, if we shatter too many voices with sonar, then perhaps the ocean will answer. Not with words, but with shifts. Currents disrupted, climates destabilized, storms rising with new ferocity. Already, the ocean feels restless. Hurricanes feed on warmer waters, reaching greater strengths. Coral reefs bleach in silence, their colors fading like memories. Fisheries collapse, the once endless abundance thinning year after year. These we explain as consequences of our own industry, our own emissions, our own excess, and that is true. But what if layered within these crises there's also resistance? What if the ocean itself, or the beings that live within it, are reacting, not out of malice but in defense, like an immune system fighting an infection it does not understand? Imagine walking along a storm-lashed beach. The air is thick with salt and electricity, the waves crashing high and violent. To you it is weather, but what if to another intelligence it is communication, the only language strong enough to make us listen? A warning, a plea, or even a demand. Stop. This is the risk of awakening the deep. That in our rush for resources, in our hunger for expansion, we may be jostling not empty wilderness, but occupied space. We may be poking the bars of a zoo we did not realize we lived inside, agitating keepers who have until now allowed us freedom, but who may not remain patient forever. And yet, the tragedy is that we may not even recognize the signs. To us, a storm is a storm. A bloom of strange plankton is a curiosity. A sonar anomaly is an error, but perhaps through our blindness, we are ignoring messages already sent. Perhaps the ocean has been speaking, not in voices we expect, but in rhythms of tide and current, in the sudden appearance of new species, in the collapse of old ones. Perhaps it has been telling us, again and again, you are not alone, and your actions have consequences. To realize this is to feel the sea differently. The spray that stings at your skin no longer feels playful, but watchful. The rumble of surf beneath a storm becomes not noise, but warning. The horizon, stretching so endlessly, feels less like freedom and more like responsibility. For if the deep does hold alien life, and if we are disturbing it, then we must ask ourselves a question far older than our technologies, far older than our sciences. How do you live as a guest? How do you share a world with those who were here long before you, who may yet outlast you, who see in you not a master of earth, but a child thrashing in the shallows, unaware of the depths beneath? If we fail to ask, if we fail to change, then the risk is not only that we awaken the deep, but that we awaken it in anger. If the oceans of earth already hold mysteries beyond our comprehension, then perhaps they are more than just destinations for discovery. Perhaps they are classrooms, training grounds, where we prepare for journeys yet to come. For the skills we learn in plumbing the abyss here, patience, humility, new ways of perceiving life, are the same ones we will need when we send our machines, and maybe one day ourselves, to alien oceans beyond this planet. Close your eyes and imagine descending into Europa's ice, A frozen ceiling stretches above like a cathedral roof, cracked with blue fissures, the cold so deep it bites into the bones of steel. A probe, lowered by human hands, melts through miles of ice until it breaks into a black sea untouched by sunlight for billions of years. What we find there, if anything, will not be understood through arrogance. It will require the same humility we practice when we peer into our own trenches, the same willingness to let the unknown teach us before we claim to understand it. And that is why Earth's oceans matter. They are not only mysteries in themselves, they are mirrors of other seas scattered across the cosmos. Europa, Enceladus, Titan, names that echo like distant bells, all hold water in vast quantities. Some hide it under ice, some mix it with methane, some cradle it in global oceans deeper than Earth's by orders of magnitude. To explore them, we must first master exploration here. We must learn how to send machines into darkness, how to read signals buried in noise, how to recognize life that does not look like us. Already, Earth trains us in this. When biologists first discovered tube worms clustered around hydrothermal vents, it shattered assumptions. No sunlight, no plants, yet thriving ecosystems, fed by chemistry instead of photosynthesis. To recognize such life on another world, we had to first accept it on our own. When extremophiles were found in acidic pools, in frozen lakes beneath glaciers, in methane seeps, we learned that life is not fragile but tenacious. And so now, when we imagine Europa's seas, or Enceladus as geysers, we do not see impossibility. We see possibility because Earth has already shown us. But it is not only about detection, it is about protection. If alien life exists beneath other skies, we face an ethical question. How do we enter without destroying? How do we study without contaminating, touch without wounding? Here again, the ocean is our teacher. For too long, we have entered it carelessly, leaving plastics, oil, and noise in our wake. But if we change, if we learn to treat the deep as sacred, to build technologies that listen more than they intrude, to recognize that even microbes may hold wisdom beyond our own, then we will carry those lessons outward. We will arrive on other worlds not as conquerors, but as guests. Think of the tools we are already building. Submersibles that glide silently, powered by currents rather than propellers. Robots that move like fish, flexible and quiet. Sensors that listen instead of shout, detecting whispers of movement without scattering the water with sound. Each one is not only a step toward mapping our own seas, but a rehearsal for alien oceans. To test them here is to prepare for there. To fail here, where we can learn, is to avoid failure in places where second chances may not come. There is a poetic symmetry in this. The very oceans that may hold alien life beneath their waves are also the ones that prepare us to meet it elsewhere. Earth trains us in humility, patience, wonder. It reminds us that most of what is alive is hidden, that strangeness is the rule, not the exception. It tells us that discovery is not conquest, but conversation. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson of all, for when we finally break through the ice of Europa, or dip into Titan's methane seas, or listen to the plumes of Enceladus, we may find not strangers, but kin. Life that breathes differently, moves differently, thinks differently, but life nonetheless. And when that moment comes, we will be grateful that Earth taught us first how to see, how to hear, how to recognize wonder when it drifts before us like a flicker of light in the dark. To stand at the edge of the Pacific, or to listen to the waves of the Atlantic, is to practice for that day. The salt on your lips, the rumble of surf in your chest, the endless horizon stretching away, these are reminders that the unknown is always near, always calling, and in answering that call here on Earth, we learn how to answer it elsewhere, among the stars. The ocean is not only a mystery, it is a rehearsal, a training ground, where we learn the art of being explorers, not invaders. And one day, when we kneel beside alien seas and watch our machines vanish into their depths, we will know that we first learned courage and humility on the shores of our own world. To imagine that alien life swims within our oceans is to be reminded of how little we truly know, not only of the universe beyond, but of the world beneath our feet. We look upward with telescopes, dreaming of signals across the stars, and yet we have barely dipped below the surface of our own seas. It is a paradox, humbling and instructive, that before we search the skies for neighbors, we must first learn to see what glides beside us, hidden in the blue vastness we take for granted. The first lesson, then, is humility. To stand on a shoreline is to feel it, the horizon stretching beyond sight, the taste of salt on the air, the crash and hiss of waves that have rolled for millions of years before us, and will continue for millions after. The ocean does not bow to our maps or our machines. It keeps secrets with a patience far beyond our timelines, reminding us that our knowledge is small, our confidence fragile. To consider that it may cradle alien life is to recognize that the human story is not the central chapter of Earth, but one among many. The second lesson is curiosity, a curiosity that must be patient, reverent, gentle. The ocean resists haste. Submersibles must descend slowly, ears straining for creaks as pressure mounts. Divers must ration breath, movement slowed by the weight of water. Researchers wait for days, weeks, months, listening for signals that may never come. This is the rhythm of true exploration, not conquest, but listening, not rushing, but watching. If alien life does live beneath the waves, we will not meet it through force or haste, but through patience, by tuning ourselves to frequencies we have long ignored. A third lesson is wonder, for even without aliens, the ocean already feels otherworldly, the glow of bioluminescent creatures scattering like stars in black water, the silence of trenches where light has never touched, the shimmering forests of kelp swaying with the pull of unseen tides. These are not scenes from distant exoplanets. They are Earth, our home. To realize this is to awaken to the fact that we live already on a planet of strangeness, that alien beauty is not only possible elsewhere, but present here. And yet, the possibility of oceanic aliens deepens the wonder further. If life began twice, if intelligence rose separately, if neighbors already share our seas, then our view of reality must shift. No longer would alien life be a question of if, but of where and how often. No longer would we see life as a miracle restricted to Earth, but as a pattern, a thread woven into the fabric of existence wherever conditions allow. This lesson transforms the cosmos from emptiness into potential. Every star a beacon above oceans we have not yet touched. There is also a moral lesson. To consider aliens in our oceans is to confront how we behave toward what we do not yet understand. Do we treat the sea as resource, as wilderness to exploit, or as sanctuary, as home to others whose rights we cannot yet measure? If the answer is the latter, then our responsibility deepens. Every drop of plastic, every burst of sonar, every act of mining becomes not just environmental harm, but an ethical question. How do we live alongside intelligences we cannot yet see? And perhaps the deepest lesson is this: alien life may not be far away. It may not require rockets or telescopes, only openness. It may swim past us, unrecognized, its signals mistaken for noise, its presence dismissed as myth. To entertain this possibility is to realize that the frontier is not only in the stars, but in the water at our feet. The mystery is not distant, it is intimate. Every wave could be carrying more than salt and foam. It could be carrying kin we have yet to recognize. To reflect on this is to change the way we live with Earth itself. The ocean becomes not backdrop, but central character. The planet becomes not ours alone, but shared stage, and humanity becomes not the sole audience of the cosmos, but one of many, learning, listening, participating in a larger play. And so the lessons gather, like seashells left by the tide: humility, curiosity, wonder, morality, intimacy. Each one a reminder that the possibility of oceanic aliens is not only about them, but about us, about how we choose to see, how we choose to live, how we choose to listen. Stand on a quiet beach with these lessons in mind. The air is cool, tinged with salt. The sand is damp beneath your feet, yielding slightly with each step. The horizon glows with the fading light of day, soft hues of violet and gold melting into the dark. And as the waves curl in and retreat, you realize that the ocean is teaching, always teaching. The question is not whether it holds aliens. The question is whether we are ready to learn from it, whatever it holds. As the waves fold and unfold before you, their rhythm steady as breath, a final thought rises, unsettling, humbling, but impossible to ignore. If the oceans truly cradle alien life, if intelligence swims unseen beneath the surface, then Earth is not wholly ours. The blue expanses that dominate this planet may not be wilderness waiting for us to map, but territory already inhabited, already claimed. And then comes the question: are we explorers here, or are we late arrivals? To think of ourselves as explorers feels natural. Humanity has always cast itself in this role, crossing deserts, climbing mountains, sailing into unknown seas. We tell ourselves that the earth was empty until we stepped into its corners, that the stars wait for us to claim them. But perhaps this story is incomplete. Perhaps the ocean reminds us that we are not first nor alone, that when we stand at the shoreline, gazing out, we are not pioneers, but intruders in a world already woven with other histories. Picture the deep trenches, black as obsidian, their walls descending farther than Everest rises. Imagine the silence there, heavy as stone, broken only by the occasional flicker of light from creatures evolved to thrive without sun. Now add this: what if those flickers are not just lures, not just biology, but messages, fragments of communication exchanged between minds that have dwelt there for eons? To them, we are the newcomers. To them, our submarines are clumsy intrusions, our sonar blasts deafening shouts in a cathedral of quiet. We are not discoverers, we are interruptions. This thought reshapes the narrative of our existence. For if the oceans are already occupied, then Earth itself is not a human planet. It is a shared world, a layered home where we live not as owners, but as tenants. The land may feel like ours, tilled, built upon, divided by borders, but the sea, vast and unmapped, may belong to others whose tenancy predates us by millions of years. And if this is so, then perhaps Earth itself is part of something larger, a cosmic experiment, a shared stage where different forms of life coexist, sometimes knowingly, sometimes unaware. Perhaps the oceans are not barriers, but laboratories, places where evolution has been tested not once but many times, where alien seeds may have mingled with terrestrial soil, where life has been cultivated with purpose. If so, then humanity is not author of Earth's story, but one of its chapters, one voice among many in a planetary chorus. To realize this is to feel the world differently. The air in your lungs is no longer simply yours. It may be the byproduct of alien custodians tending plankton blooms. The rain on your skin may have cycled through oceans shaped by chemistries you do not understand. The soil beneath your feet may be enriched by the quiet work of unseen organisms nudging balance from below. Every breath, every step, every drink of water becomes a shared act, part of a system that does not belong to us alone. And so the haunting question deepens. Are we ready to accept that we are not the center, that we are not rulers of Earth, but participants? To accept this is to surrender certainty, to admit that when we look at the horizon, we do not look at emptiness, but at neighbors who may be watching us even now, deciding whether we are capable of living in a world that was never only ours. It is a humbling vision, but also a profound one, for if Earth is shared, then so too is responsibility. To pollute the ocean would be not only environmental neglect, but trespass. To explore without care would be invasion. Yet to listen, to respect, to learn, that could be the beginning of true coexistence. Perhaps that is the final lesson the sea whispers, when its waves curl and retreat, that we must decide who we are. Are we explorers, respectful and humble, eager to learn? Or are we latecomers, blind to the presences that preceded us, thrashing in ignorance, risking the balance of a world not ours to command? And maybe, just maybe, the answer lies not in what we discover, but in how we choose to live with the mystery. For the ocean does not owe us revelation. It does not need to show us what dwells in its depths. It waits, patient, immense, ancient. The question is whether we are ready to look beyond ourselves, ready to accept kinship where we once saw only emptiness, ready to share a world already occupied. Stand at the water's edge one last time. The horizon stretches like an endless thought, the salt air sharp and cool, the surf a lullaby as old as the planet. You watch the waves pull back and return, and in that rhythm you feel it, the final question echoing like a tide. Are we explorers of Earth, or simply late arrivals in a home that was never ours alone? The ocean waves look familiar, their rhythm steady and soothing, their shimmer silvered beneath the moon. Yet what lies beneath them may be stranger than anything we could find beyond the stars. In their darkness, there are worlds we have not yet seen, voices we have not yet heard, lives we have not yet named. We point telescopes towards distant galaxies, listening for whispers across light years. But perhaps the signal we long for is already here, carried in currents, hidden in silence, waiting in the deep. The true encounter may not fall from the sky, but rise from below, from trenches older than memory, from waters that cradle both the known and the unknown. And so, every time we gaze across the ocean horizon, we may not be looking at emptiness, we may be staring at the surface of another civilization's home, their presence just beneath the waves, as close as the tide, as vast as the sea itself. Thank you for drifting into this journey with me. If you felt the pull of the unknown tonight, I invite you to like and subscribe so more wanderers may find their way here. And tell me in the comments, where in the world are you listening from, and what hour of night keeps you company? I'd love to know how far these currents travel. Until we meet again, may the waves guide your dreams, and may the deep remind you, the universe is not only above us, but also below. Good night.